Hello everyone, welcome to my kitchen. My name is Michael and today we're going to be making another fermented food. We're going to be making pickled green beans and corn. So they call it pickled green beans and corn, but it's actually fermented. And so we've got all of my ingredients out here and we're going to get started on that. So the first time that I ever came across pickled beans and corn was in the mountains of western North Carolina. And I had never had them before. And when I tasted this side dish, I couldn't believe what I was tasting. It was absolutely delicious and I had to know how to make it. So I'm going to show you my take on it today. So what we're going to do is I've got green beans here and I've got 8 ears of corn. So I've got 2 pounds of green beans and I've got 8 ears of corn, and we're going to go and we're going to prepare our green beans and our corn. And I've got some half a gallon of water here, and this is filtered non-chlorinated water. So if you've got water that you're pulling out of the tap, you might want to let it sit overnight, or you can boil it, and that kind of speeds up the process a little bit of it. If you've got a filter that removes chlorine, you can definitely use that. If you want to use bottled water, you can use spring water for that. It's just like any other fermented food that we'll be making. You don't want to put chlorinated water in it because it could mess it up. And if you go to that much trouble and go and put that much time into it, we want to make sure that we're going to get a good batch out of it. So definitely get dechlorinated filtered water, and this is a half a gallon. And I'm going to be making a small batch today. I like my 2.5 liter crock that I've got here. I'll put the link in the description box below if you haven't seen my sauerkraut video where I made that, or my kimchi video where I made that. I'll put that in the link in the description box, that way you can see that. I like making the smaller batches, that way you don't have a big family or you don't want to can it. Canning it, when you put it in water bath canning, will kill the probiotics in it. You can freeze these things also, but that does the same thing. So if you make smaller batches, put it in your refrigerator. You can eat on it that way, and then you can have it whenever you need it or whenever you'd like it. And then the last ingredient that I've got here is salt. And whatever salt you want to use, you use that. I've got pickling and canning salt, and the only ingredient that you want on your salt should say salt. You don't want anything else on it. If you get some of the other salts, you might see where it's got iodine in it, or it might have some kind of caking agent in it which keeps it from caking up. You don't want to use any of those things because that could interfere with the fermenting process of our vegetables. So the only ingredient you want on whatever salt you use should be salt. So I like the pickle and canning salt for that. I don't have to worry about it with that. So let's get started with this. So I've got a big stock pot here, and I'm going to be putting my corn in that because I want to blanch the corn, and then I'm going to prepare my beans and I'm going to cook those, and I'll show you what those look like. Once we pull it out of the crock, it's ready to eat right then. You can either take it right there and eat it right out of the crock, or you can take it and warm it up and eat it that way. It's however you want to do it. Just remember, if you do heat it up, you could take the chance of killing some of the probiotics in it. So definitely check the temperature on that when you're raising the temperature up on it. If you don't want to eat it cold when you warm it up, that could do that as well. All right, so let's get started preparing our green beans. And I've got a colander here. I'm going to move this corn out of the way, set it here to the side. I've got my pot here heating up. Definitely want that to go. I'm probably going to transfer this to the stove so that I can get that boiling a little bit faster. But what we're going to do with our beans is, if you take those and it's got the stem here, we want to pull that off. And then if there's another spot on the end, you can take that and pinch it off with your fingers. I've got a trash can here on the side. And I'm going to go ahead and take my other colander out here. If you haven't seen this, I'll put the link in the description box. This thing is really nice. That way you can rinse everything off in it, put it back in here, and it can rest. So with your pickled beans and corn, we're just going to break our beans up into little pieces like that. And we're going to do that with all of these. So break the stems off of them. If there's any bad spots on them, just take those off on the ends and just break them apart like that. If you get some of the beans inside of them out of them, that's fine too. That works just as well. So I'm going to continue to work on these, and we'll get these washed up and ready to go. All right, I've got my beans cut up now, and I wanted to show you what those look like. So just however you want to cut them, you want them in bite-sized pieces. So again, this is 2 pounds, and if you see any bad places on them, cut those out. You don't want those in your mixture of that. So now I'm going to take these to the sink, and I'm going to give these a good rinse, and I'm going to come back and put them in this pan, and I'm going to put some water on them to cover them, and we're going to cook them. So I'm going to go rinse them. I'll be right back. All right, I gave my beans a good wash and everything. I washed them 4 times, and now we're going to transfer them into here, and then I'm going to cover them with water so they can cook. All right, now I'm gonna go get some water from my pan and I'll be right back. All right, I've got my water in the pot now and I wanted to show you what that looks like. It just comes up to where they are just starting to float on that. And we're not gonna put any seasoning in those because we'll be adding our salt into our brine water and that's what's gonna make our ferment. So this, we're just gonna cook until these change colors and I'm gonna show you what these look like. They'll go from this kind of this brightish green color to more like an olive darker color. So I'll show you what that looks like as we continue on those. I'm thinking maybe about 20 to 25 minutes, we'll see. And you can taste them too. You can pull one out and taste it and see when they get close to being done. They still want them a little crisp. You don't want them mushy. And then at that point, we'll take them off and we'll go on to our next step with that. So I'm gonna let these cook. And while that's cooking there, I'm gonna take my corn. And with this, we're just gonna take it and I'm gonna pull the husk off the outside of it. And I'm gonna go get this a little wash here in the sink, but I'm gonna go ahead and get all 8 of these done and I'll be right back. All right, I've got all the husk and the silk off of my corn now. I did take it over to the sink and just give it a good little wash to make sure that I got all of the silks off of them. And I'm waiting for my water now. I did move my bigger pot to the stove and I'm gonna let that come up to a boil. Then I'm gonna put these in, turn the heat down on low and let these cook for about 7 minutes. So as soon as that water comes up to a boil, we'll put these in, we'll turn it down on low, and we'll let these cook for 7 minutes, and then our corn will be ready. And then I'll come back and show you what the beans look like once those get to the point where they're ready to be done and ready to be pulled out. So stick with me. I am back, and my corn is done now, and I did take it out of the pot where it was cooking, and I put it in some water, and then I put some ice cubes on the top of it. So I want to stop the cooking process on my corn. So I'm just going to let this sit and come down to room temperature. And I wanted to show you what my green beans look like here. So you can see these have been cooking for about 10 minutes now. And you can see they've changed colors just a little bit. I'll bring them up here so you can really see them in the thing. They're not quite done yet. They need to cook just a little bit longer. So I'm thinking maybe another 10 or 15 minutes and I'll come back and I'll show you what these look like, but they're getting close. I am back and my beans are done now. I wanted to show you what those look like. So I'm gonna put this over to the side here and I'm gonna take a couple of these out and let you see what color they are. So that's what color we've got for our beans. They did change color. They went from that bright green color down to this kind of a, what I call like maybe an olive darker color. So I did taste these and these are pretty tender. They're not completely cooked because you definitely don't want them cooked all the way through that they're just mushy. So you definitely want a little bit of a texture to them, but you definitely want them cooked pretty close to done. I've got my corn over here and I've got it all submerged underwater. So now I'm going to take my beans and put those into this bowl that I've got here. And for this step too, if you want to use a colander to make sure you get all the water out of the beans before you put them in your bowl, I've got a slotted spoon here that's working pretty good. But definitely if you don't have a slotted spoon, you can use a colander to drain off the water out of your beans. All right, now that I've got my beans in my bowl here, we're gonna let these come up to room temperature also. We're not gonna put these under the cold ice water like we did our corn. We're gonna let these just cool on their own. I am gonna put something over the top of these. My corn is submerged underwater, so I'm not too concerned about that. But you definitely want to cover these up. You don't want anything that might be in your house that could be flying around, because anything like that can get into your beans and absolutely ruin them. You do not want that to have to contend with. So until we can get those in the crock and get them sealed up, make sure that you've got these covered up. And what we're going to do with that is I'm going to take a little bit of twine and a little rubber band. And with my twine and my rubber band, I'm just going to take it and I'm just going to tie a knot on one end of it, just right down on this side. And I'm going to take this string, and there's a little lip, natural lip that's on this bowl here. And I'm just going to kind of bring it right under it and make sure that it's kind of nice and tight. And I'm going to take this rubber band and I'm going to loop the thread through the other side of it. And that's what I'm going to use to pull it. And you can get it pretty tight there. And you want to make sure you get all of your fabric that you've got there covered up, just to make sure you don't want anything getting up under there that could ruin that. And you just want to give that a little bit of a pull, and then you can take your string and take the other side of it and just kind of loop it under it and give it a little tie off as well. All right, so we got that there. We've got our string under there. And if you want to put this away somewhere, you can set this in your microwave, or you can set it in your cold oven, just anywhere that you want to for it to cool down. And once it gets cooled down, we'll come back and we'll move on to our next step. Stick with me. So like I said earlier, we're going to be using water, and I've got a half a gallon of water here, or this is 2 liters of water. And then with that, I'm going to be adding my pickling and canning salt, and I've got 83 grams of my salt here. So depending on what kind of salt you use, it could be a lot coarser or it could be a lot finer. So definitely, if you've got kitchen scales to measure this, use that, because what could happen is if you had thicker grains of salt and you measured out a 1/4 cup, you'd get a different measurement than what I've got here, because this is a lot finer than maybe a coarser kosher salt. So definitely, if you've got kitchen scales to measure it out, 83 grams is what we're going to use. And with that, I'm just going to go in with a spoon or a spatula here and just mix that around to get that dissolved in there. What we don't want to happen is not to dissolve it and then you pour off the top and then all your salt is in the bottom of it. So definitely, we're going to give this several stir arounds, and then even before I come back and get ready to put it into my crock, I'm going to give it another stir just to make sure that it's completely dissolved. All right, let's set this to the side now. So we've got our salt. We've got our crock. Everything is clean and sterilized. I've got my glass weights that I've got here. I've got those cleaned as well. So now let's go ahead and get ready for our corn. So I'm going to go ahead and take the lid off that. I've still got this under water. I'm going to go dump that out here in just a second. All right, so I've got my cover off my beans now, and I've got my corn here ready to go. Got my clean hands, and we'll take a knife, and we're going to take our corn and we're going to cut it off the cob as close as you can get it to the cob. So be really careful with this. You want to get down as close as you can to it. And I'll go ahead and work on the rest of them. All right, so I've got all of my corn cut off the cob now. And so with my beans, I want to make sure that get just a little bit more of that water right up there. If there's any left, I'll take this bench scraper, kind of hold everything in place and see if I can get a little bit more of that water out of there. All right, so I've got all of my corn cut off now, and if you're looking at your batch and you want to add more beans, you can, then corn, if you don't want to put as much corn in it. I try to make it so that it kind of gives it half and half on that, so definitely if you've got some really big ears of corn, it might not take as much with what you've got with your beans there, and we're just going to put that in like that, and I'm just going to give this a little mix through with the spatula here just to kind of get it incorporated just a little bit. Break some of the corn up, and we'll go ahead and put the rest of it in our batch. All right, let me clean my bench up here, and we will get ready to start packing our jar. So now let's start packing the crock. You want to make sure your crock is really clean. I did give that a really good wash before we started, and I've got some tongs, and we just want to kind of start bringing this over with our corn and our beans and just pick it up ever so lightly there, and we're going to pack our crock. All right, so I've got my crock filled about halfway now, so if you've seen my other videos where I make my kraut and things, I'm going to pack this down the same way. So I've got a tamper here, a wooden tamper, and I'm just going to bring this in and just pack this down. We want to make sure that we don't have any air pockets in there, so just give that a good tamp down, and that way we'll be able to get some more of our beans and our corn down into the crock. And from looking at it now, I'm about halfway up with the crock here where I'm at with that. So let's get the last bit of our ingredients here in. All right, so I've got the last of my veggies in there, so let's give this a little tamp down again and get that pressed down in there really well. All right, so I've got that tamped down in there really well, and I'm looking up on the sides here just to make sure that I don't have any corn or anything that's up above where that is, because we want to make sure that everything stays submerged under our brine. So if there's anything on the top up here that might be exposed to the air that could cause mold, and we definitely don't want that in there. So just take a look and see if there's anything that might be up under the lid here. You can just take your finger and just kind of run up in there just to make sure that nothing else was up under it. And so now to keep everything under the brine, because we've got that loose corn in there, I've got some cabbage. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of these outer leaves off, and then I'm going to grab me really some good ones here. This is a organic head of cabbage that I've got here. So I'm just going to take a couple of these off, and then I'm going to go over to the sink and give them a little wash just to make sure that there's not any grit or anything in them. So I'll be back in just a minute. I'm going to go give these a wash. All right, now that I've got my cabbage cleaned up here, we're just going to take this and we're going to pack this around just like you would do if you were doing a normal ferment of anything else. So the reason I use the cabbage is because you can get these nice solid pieces here, and I'm just going to put this around inside the crock here on the top, And that way, anything that's potentially above the line when I get ready to put my brine in it won't be floating on the top of it. So you can just kind of pull it off around this big stem here, and you kind of get some flat pieces here, and we just want to put that along the sides and get that around the top really well so that we keep anything from floating on the top. All right, I've turned my crock around here where I can see just a little bit better down in there. You definitely want to take that, all precautions with that. And I think I'm gonna go grab me another piece of the cabbage because there's a little bit of spot here on the side that I want to use, and I'm gonna go pull me off another one of these leaves on here, and I'll be right back. So I've got my cabbage leaves now, and the top, everything looks like it's nicely packed in there. And just remember, I'm gonna come in and give that just one little bit of a stir just to make sure that I get that all mixed together. So I believe that's coming along. So now we're gonna take your weights. I don't see anything floating. Want to give it one last look, and we're gonna drop our weights in. And I've got one here on the other side. All right, so now that I've got my weights in, I did have just a few more pieces of bean that come up on the top there that could be floating. So I want to get that out of there. I don't want to leave that in there. So just take your time with it and they'll come right out. All right, I believe I've got everything out of there now. I'm just going to give that a push down with my fingers just to make sure that I get that all down under there and give it one last look. And I did release another piece of corn. I just want to grab that out of there and give that one last look just to make sure that I don't see anything else floating on that. All right, that looks good. Now what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this one last little bit of a stir up, and I'm going to put in an inch or two above my weights is what I want to do. I want to make sure that everything stays submerged. All right, that looks like that's about an inch above my weights. I'm almost at the top, and I see just a little piece of bean here on the side. I believe that has got me now. Everything is looking good. I didn't quite use all of that. All right, I got me a paper. I just want to go around the lip on the top here just to make sure that I don't have anything on the top, and we will clean that a little bit off there. Give it one last look. Everything's looking good. Everything is submerged. We've got a good packing of this crock here. Let's put our top on it now, and I'm going to use a little bit of the brine water here on the top, and I'm just going to put that around the top here, and then I'll move it back to the counter back here and let it sit. So before I get it completely filled up, just want to give that a little bit of a seal there. Now we're ready to go. So like with any ferment, if you like a really strong ferment, then leave it in there 4 to 6 weeks is what I do. And that way you've got a nice strong ferment. A lot of people don't like it really strong, and then you might want to leave it in there for a couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks. So it's just completely up to you. What we want to do is, if this is your first batch making this, let it go for a longer period of time. Let that be your experiment. If you open this up during the processing like that, a lot of people say, oh, go in there and taste it. Then you'll have to pull the cabbage leaves up, and then you'll have to taste it, see if you like it. Then you got to pack it back down in there and make sure that everything gets submerged again. It's a lot of work with that. So test it, experiment with it. That's why we're making these smaller batches, and see where you like it. I do like, if you get it in the stores and you're used to that kraut taste where you've got it in there and you've got a nice briny taste to it, then 4 weeks to 5 weeks, 6 weeks is what we're looking for. If you don't like it that strong, then maybe cut it down to 2 or 3. Completely up to you. That's what's nice about making this at home, is you control the time and the process and the way you and your family like it. I'm going to go ahead and put this on the counter behind me. I'll go ahead and fill the rest of this ring up on this. And what I've noticed with these smaller crocks is that it wants to evaporate a lot more every day on it. So just keep a check on these with these smaller ones. Make sure that this stays sealed, because what we want to do is we want all of that air to come out of there, and once it starts fermenting, it's going to create a gas, and that gas is going to escape out of there. And that's what's nice about these crocks, is that gas will come out and it won't allow air back in there. So after about 3 or 4 days, you might hear it on the counter over there with a little bit of that gas coming out of there. So that is perfectly normal. That's what we want to do. We want all of that to escape out of there. So that's why when you fill up your crock, you want to try to get it as high as you can. I've got probably, with the water level in it, is probably right up to about here on this one. So definitely, if you want to make a smaller batch in this one to experiment with it, you can do that. Just make sure that everything is submerged and you've got an inch or 2 of your brine solution above your weights is what we want to do. So I will see you back, and we will take the top off of this and we will take a look and see what we have for our pickled beans and corn. Stick with me. I am back. It's been 5 weeks since we put our beans and our corn into our crock here with our brine to make our pickled beans and corn, also known as fermented beans and corn. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. I've not opened this up since we put this in 5 weeks ago, and I'm just going to go in with a paper towel and just soak up some of this water that's on my lid here. And if you haven't seen some of my other videos on my fermentation with the smaller crock, you definitely have to keep a watch on the water reservoir here on the top, because it does want to kind of dry out a little bit more than the larger one does. So definitely, if you get the smaller one like I've got here to make the smaller batches, then keep a watch on it, because it does have a tendency, the reservoir is not as big than the larger ones are. The reason I like these smaller crocks is you can make smaller batches and just keep fresh going all the time. If you like fermentation food as much as I do, the smaller batches work out really well. So let's open this up and take a look at this and see what we've got. This has got still a nice little seal on it. I'm going to take that off, and you can see that there for the first time like I'm looking at it also. And I don't see any calm yeast. I don't see any mold. Good sign, no mold. We don't like mold. If we see mold, it goes into the trash can. Let's give it a smell and see what it smells like. It smells like pickled beans and corn. It's got that nice fermented smell to it. So I'm going to go ahead and take out my weights. I'm going to go ahead and grab some extra paper, and we're going to take that out here, take my weights out, and then remove the pieces, and we'll go ahead and pack our jar with our pickled beans and corn. Stick with me. All right, I did go grab me some more paper towels and got the rest of that water off of there. So I went and got me a flashlight, and I wanted to show you what that looks like. So there's nothing in there. We've got a nice color to our pickled beans and corn. All right, so I'm gonna go put my flashlight away. I'm gonna give my hands a good wash, and we'll come back and we'll take our pickled beans and corn out and we'll put it into our jar. With anything that you're fermenting, you can leave it in here as long as you want to. When I'm making my sauerkraut, I typically leave it in there 4 weeks up to 6 weeks in there. You can typically put this in there. If you don't want it as fermented or that taste to it, you can take it out and check on it in two weeks to see if you like that. Or you can just leave it in there between 4 and 6 weeks, just like I did here. So I compromised on that and left it in here for 5. So let's go ahead and take out our weights. All right, so I've got one side of my weights out. Put that in that plate there. And my cabbage that I put in there is floating to the top now, which is a good sign. We definitely did not want any of that to come into the top. We wanted no vegetables on the top, because that's where you get that, if it's going to mold, is where everything starts floating to the top. So we definitely don't want that to happen. I wish you were here with me, because this smells absolutely incredible. I know you're going to love this. If you've never tried pickled beans and corn, definitely give this a try. If you like sauerkraut and other fermented foods, it's just along that same line of that. So we'll be tasting one of our beans here and our corn in just a minute. So as you saw this, when we started this, we went in and we blanched our beans and we blanched our corn and everything. So, all right, now that I've got everything removed out of there, let's go ahead and start taking our beans and our corn out. And I'm gonna give me a first little smell of this. That is absolutely incredible. If you've never had pickled beans and corn, this has that same sauerkraut smell to it. So definitely give this a try. I know you're going to love this recipe also. So I've got a ½ gallon jar here, and I'm just going to put this in the refrigerator. You can definitely put this in the refrigerator and keep the brine in it. And that way it'll still continue to ferment just a little bit. It'll get just a little bit stronger, and there's gonna, when you put it in the refrigerator, it will cool down and it's not gonna ferment as fast as it did here sitting on the countertop. So definitely you can put it in the refrigerator and keep it that way. Just make sure you put the brine in on the top of it. You can also freeze it. Freezing it though, if you're looking for those probiotics in there, that will definitely kill that if it's frozen. And you can also can this. So by canning it also, it's going to kill the probiotics in it. So the smaller batch of this is going to be really nice, because that way I can just put it in there and just eat on it. And I've got it to have. Just make sure you put your brine in it when you're packing your jar. I'm going to see if I can get all of it in this. If I can't, I'll go grab, I've got some quart jars with these little swing lids on that I can put that in. So I'm going to continue to unpack this jar, and then we'll give this a taste and I'll put this away. All right, I am back, and I wanted to show you what my crock yielded here. So I've got a ½ gallon here that I've got almost to the top, And then I've got maybe another pint here on the side with the brine left in that. So definitely you'll have just a little over half a gallon with what we made here today. And so I'm going to scoop me up some of this and give this a little taste test and let you see this again, how pretty this is. That is absolutely, looks delicious. The smell is absolutely incredible. And I'm going to give this a taste and see what this tastes like. That is absolutely delicious. I know you're going to love this recipe. And if you've never tried pickled beans and corn or fermented beans and corn, they're not really pickled, they're fermented. But they do have that taste like you get when you ferment cabbage and other things that you get when you definitely do that. So give this a try. I'm going to put this in my refrigerator. Like I said, I'm going to store it. I'm going to eat out of that tonight. I'm going to have some of that for my dinner. And then I'll just eat off of that and keep the brine over the top of it. And I'm going to finish this off. And I'm going to go ahead and get another batch started because that's how delicious this is. So definitely leave me a comment in the comment section if you've ever had pickled beans and corn or fermented beans and corn. So if you try this, please leave me a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I want to know what you think about it and how yours turned out. So this, like I said, a few ingredients here. We've got green beans, we've got corn, we've got some salt and water and thyme and a small crock. And you saw what we made here today. If you like this content, maybe you might consider giving me a thumbs up. I would really appreciate it. And check out one of these other two videos over here on the side. You might find something else you like. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. I can't wait to hear from you how your pickled beans and corn turned out. I'll see you in my next video. Bye-bye now.